I'm going to apologize real quick just for the fact that I have a table over there. We had a leak in our ceiling and had to change the layout of the room around. That meant that I didn't have a bedside table anymore, so now I've got that. Plus, I'm not really well dressed for this video. I don't really know what I was gonna wear to this. I could probably dress nicer. I could dress nicer. I just my hair's a mess, and this is how I dress lately when I'm like not really in the mood to fix up my hair. So, in order to do this video, I want to just kind of take you back in time. It's the year 2016. My birthday had just passed, and like a lot of my friends and fellow theater kids, I wanted to totally, finally live up to my dream of finally becoming a film director and making my very first feature-length film. I was also quickly realizing that in order to properly enroll in film school, which was my goal at the time, you had to have at least like a little bit of a resume behind you, something to just show to them to say like, yeah, I made content and this is what I worked on and this is what I'm capable of. At the time, I had only done some very short, not really big deal, just content for my YouTube channel alongside various of my friends, family members. But the one I always found myself gravitating more towards and doing more often was stop motion animation. I loved making little movies and videos with my Lego collection that I had at the time. Animation in general always had kind of fascinated me as a kid. Ever since I was a kid, animation just was amazing to me with all the variety and the work involved with it and all the different media and you know levels of creativity and everything you can do with stop motion animation. Especially it was all with this rolling around in my head that in my silly little 16-year-old brain, I was going to make my very first movie, and it was going to be a movie that was entirely made by me and about all the things I had always loved: superheroes, Lego, animation, R-rated comedy, just comic books, everything, all just put into this one little thing. And this little dream project of mine would go on to be titled, in a sort of meta way, The Rejects. As you can probably tell by the way I'm presenting this information to you, The Rejects never happened. I never got to make that movie. I never finished working on it. But if you're tuning in just for specific parts of the story, I'll have timestamps in the description and however YouTube does that stupid little bar thingy or whatever, just so you can jump to certain points of it. This is a video that has been on the back burner for a very long time. I had to do a lot more work to make this video than I was anticipating, but I'd wanted to make it for a while now because I was just kind of tired of it just being this stagnant thing in my life that I never really got to do anything with. And now we're here. So let's begin. Behind the scenes. Okay, so I guess the best place to start with telling the story is kind of everything that went on behind the scenes and what led up to it. To make the long story short, I never was able to finish this film because I had quickly learned the amount of work and everything going into a movie when you're working on a film alone. When you're the one that's animating, writing, rewriting, voicing most of the characters, editing, reshooting, more editing, doing sound design. You can see how quickly this all just piles up and can drain a person. Especially back then, I think a lot of my struggles with actually being able to work on the film came from pressures that I was dealing with in my social life and my school life and all this other shit. I'm not blaming anyone, but I think it's stupid to not acknowledge the fact that I was 16 and there were a lot of things just going on at the time. I don't know what exactly it was, but I was finding it harder to maintain connections with my own friends as well as socializing in general. It just became a very hard thing for me to do. And due to other things going on in my uh, years at school, which I won't go on to, it also began to pile up and just make things difficult to do. And then you add on the fact that I'm trying to make a movie. It made it very hard to actually talk to people about how I felt and how I was feeling with a lot of things I was dealing with. And at the end of the day, I could always rely on my family, thankfully, to pull me through and just always be there to catch me. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses out of boring, average shit that people go through during those years in a person's life. But I do think it also is important that I acknowledge the fact that there was all this thrown in extra weight on top of me that I put upon my own shoulders when working on a movie. If you're mentally checked out in other aspects of your life, if you're just not finding your mojo coming to you, it can be very hard to actually motivate yourself to sit down and do something. Eventually, I was able to force myself into writing the first script. There. It's done. I could finally start working on the film I wanted to make. Like a lot of passion projects and even films in general, though, after beginning the process of filming, I found myself hating the story that I had come up with. So it was very clearly rushed, and it just showed how little my head was actually in the game for writing the movie that I wanted to make. I wanted it so badly, but if I wanted it, I should buckle down and make sure every aspect of the film is at a 10 and not cut corners. So very quickly, the first draft of the film was scrapped, and I began writing another script. Thankfully, this one I actually liked. The story was going to be about this small team of superheroes who had been rejected from other bigger superhero teams in that universe's continuity, hence the title, The Rejects. Very clearly, 16-year-old me fueled this one character. One of the main characters I had made up for this story was Red Arachnid, sort of this very cringy blend between Spider-Man and Deadpool, because wow, it was so cool and funny. I thought it was decent enough to actually deserve being made into a movie now that I wouldn't be so embarrassed to put on a resume for my film school. Then there came the limitations of materials. I had a massive collection of Lego compared to other kids in my school, but as dumb as it may sound, I didn't have the exact colored bricks and pieces needed for all the things I'd wanted to do from scene to scene. I had all the minifigures finished, just not all the buildings and the vehicles and the effects and the sets and the other shit, you know? It kinda is important if you're making a movie out of Lego to have Lego to make the movie. So that meant more delays on actually working on the film until I could manage to afford what I needed by working my minimum wage job at the time as a dishwasher at my town's local golf course. Eventually, I finally managed to scrap up enough tip money to afford everything needed and learned that the whole point of stop motion is to only build what is seen in frame, and not everything always is in the shot. Speaking of shots, I also at this time had acquired a photography camera from my mama. Thank you, mama. This meant that I had to learn now how to actually use and properly take photos with this new camera, because at the time, earlier with my YouTube videos and things like that I'd made out of stop motion, I was just using my cheap, shitty phone that I had at the time, which again, I'm very grateful for. But this meant that I had to learn how to actually use this new camera on top of all the regular class time and tests that school throws at high schoolers. Probably won't take that long, right? Just 2 days tops. 2 days, 3 days tops. Oh, it took more like 2 more months. Eventually, I had actually learned to properly use this camera and how to properly take pictures with the camera. Eventually, I learned how to properly take photos with this camera and actually managed to film a few scenes and fully put them together. I was also graduating around this time from grade 10 and going into grade 11, so summer was going to be the best thing for me. Summer vacation was never really that busy for me and my family because friends were always away camping or never able to actually hang out. So really, summer break was perfect for me because it was going to give me a whole bunch of time to actually sit down and work on my movie. So yeah, moving probably wasn't the greatest. Oh my god, there's like a hair and it's annoying me. I gotta hold up 1 second. So yeah, moving probably wasn't the greatest wrench to throw into all this. But hey, after I'm done doing renovations and helping out around the house, I have the rest of the summer break to make my fucking movie. Oh, time for a new school year and just to sit in the back of English class and ignore everybody because I was 17. After days at school, I'd just rush home and work more on my movie, and I was getting a little further along, but due to my lack of wanting to be in this new school or be in school at all, my grades were really probably in the roughest spot they've ever been. It's that moment when you realize that if you want to work for something you want, it means buckling down, and it means doing the work to actually earn it. Is something a lot of people have encountered at various points in their lives, and this was mine. If I really wanted to go to film school or any other form of post-secondary, I needed to improve my grades, a little at least. And that's what I did for a bit. More and more, my mental health was beginning to have these few road bumps, and I found myself struggling in a lot of things, and unfortunately, the last thing I was going to worry about during those times was some stupid Lego movie that I had been working on for close to 3 years by this point. It was during this rough phase of high school where I decided to upload the first trailer for the project with whatever scrapped together footage I had and whatever voice clips I had. And for the longest time, I just left it there. I had lost any level of passion for it. All of that creative process, the ups, the downs, the script drafts, the footage I had, the lines I had recorded at the time, I gave them all up. I continued with YouTube though, and I found myself more comfortable working on smaller scale projects just for those quick uploads once a week than I did for 1 hour long Lego movie. Eventually, I managed to graduate high school, and for the first time in a long chunk of my life, I had seemed to get a more vague handle on being a person who was more okay than I had been. I'd felt more like me than I ever had during school. Then, just one night, while digging through a small box of things I was going to give away to Value Village or donate, I found the little Red Arachnid minifigure that I had made all those years ago for that stupid little hour-long Lego movie. I was feeling happier with where I was both in life and creatively, but I didn't really want to stop the kind of content I was making at the time to commit to working on a movie again. Then I rewatched that first trailer I uploaded. I found myself getting nostalgic for something that was being made with raw passion and the level of how much I wanted that movie to be made. I wanted it. And the only comments that were left on this video I uploaded with only 15 views were friends from a lifetime ago asking when was it going to come out? Is it going to come out? But I couldn't work on a movie again. I was busy with life. So that's when I decided what I could do for my April Fool's prank that year. Okay, so this would have been the second trailer release for the film, and I already thrown out most of the only footage I had remaining from when I last started on the film. So I was going to properly pull this off somehow. So if I was going to properly pull this off, I was going to need to shoot and animate additional scenes just for this fake trailer that I would be uploading. And I managed to do just that. And ever since then, it's been a sort of this running gag that every April Fool's, I would upload some form of content related to Rejects until eventually there was enough to piece together the actual film. It only went on for a couple of years, but it was fun. I knew eventually the day would come where I'd have to make this exact video, just explaining the story and how everything led to it and and all of it. But it was genuinely fun. just doing an annual joke about myself and not everyone actually caring as much as I did. But there were at least a few people who would still ask, like, if it's legit or if it's actually coming out each time I released a fake trailer that year. Since 2021, those trailers were removed from my old YouTube channel, so you can't really see them anymore. Do not worry. You're really not missing out on much that we won't be covering in the next section of this video, but now we're here. After all the ups and downs, the budget cuts, the rewrites, the moody high school phases, it's here. And although it's not as I originally intended all those years ago, I think it's time I finally presented the rejects. Okay. Milkshake break, intermission. Play the stupid let's all go to the lobby.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Okay, we're back. Got a milkshake. We have the... Oh, this is the wrong side of the screen. We have the Rejects logo up here in this corner. I'm finally going to be giving you guys the Rejects. It is not an April Fool's joke. This is genuinely going to be me reading from the actual final draft script. Keep in mind, I wrote this back when I was 16, so a lot of this is going to be me trying to, like, scrap together all these different pieces and things from this. And due to that, once in a while, we'll have to be breaking from reading the story to do a bit of, like, further explanation, so when something shows up later, it makes a little more sense. Otherwise, we'll be in the film. Okay, let's begin. Opening scene of the film is going to start at some, like, military base. Think, like, Area 51, mixed with the Triskelion from the Marvel movies. We see guards transferring some weird kind of material in a crate when suddenly a massive explosion happens, and we see these street-level goons all pour out of these trucks with, like, snake logos on their jackets, and their leader steps out of the car. This dude with a human body and a big-ass snake head. This is King Cobra and his legion of goons. As King Cobra and his goons all raid and tear through this military base looking for that weird material we saw being transported in that crate earlier, one of the military guards working there manages to call someone for help before the phone is blasted with some kind of like acid from King Cobra's gun. Ha ha ha! Simple fool! Now that I, King Cobra, have broken into this facility, no one will be able to stop me. Not even... Cut to black as the orchestral music switches over to, like, this cover of Rock You Like a Hurricane. Jesus Christ, I really was 16 when I wrote this. We see this group of superheroes jumping out from a big jet. The main one we follow down is this guy Reaper, who lands down after doing the jump, and we meet one by one the members of this Justice League-esque team of superheroes in a variety of dynamic poses with shots showing their hero names in big text and varieties of fonts. These guys are the Guardians. You've got our main guy, Reaper, whose whole thing is that he's like Batman and the Punisher kind of mixed up, and he's got that annoying bullshit superpower of accuracy. Then we've got Whiplash, who's like the team's speedster. We've got White Dragon, who's like this super cool ninja dude, but he also has this mix of like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, so like kind of like the Hulk, where instead of turning into like a big green monster when he gets angry, White Dragon once in a while will turn into this giant like dragon. It tends to destroy a lot of the surroundings, so kind of like a Hulk situation. They never really want White Dragon turning into the dragon. But... And then there's the leader of the team, whose name is the Crimson Crusader, who's basically just a Superman allegory, but he wears like a Iron Man kind of suit that amplifies his superpowers. So like base level Crimson Crusader is like pretty powerful, but like with the armor on, he's actually like Superman strong and shit like that. You got the super strength, the speed, the laser vision, all that fun stuff. As the Guardians quickly are kicking ass, we see a boy watching the news report from his home about the superhero battle going on, saying to his parents how he wants to be a hero when he grows up. But the parents both are telling him that heroes aren't exactly the family business. And we see like a few family photos of them as like bank robbers leading up to the boy being born. This makes the kids super sad, but as the lights turn out and the parents both leave for a lovely evening robbery date, the boy sees where the battle is taking place, quickly getting an idea as he runs to his room, revealing this simple homemade superhero costume. A red hoodie, some black jeans, as well as a simple red mask with big black eyes and a big spider drawn on the hoodie. We then go back to the battle continuing on as the Guardians are fighting with King Cobra and his legion of goons. King Cobra now has his hands on this weird material that he's been looking for at this base, right as we see the boy sneaking around, hiding behind rubble and other debris, trying to watch the fight while in his costume. Reaper almost catches him out of the corner of his eye before his focus goes back to King Cobra, who's screaming in pain. The material that King Cobra was here to get seems to have began eating away at his body. It warps and it twists his body before eventually melting him completely and beginning to spread like the Blob. Crimson Crusader tries to pick up the chunk of the pavement that the goo is on and carry it away, but it quickly finds him and sticks to his chest, melting a hole right through him before it starts glowing. But just then he dies and drops this massive pile of pavement back to the ground, leaving the goop still slithering back from the cracks. Reaper runs in trying to shoot into it, noticing how it seems to try and like mimic the bullets that he's firing, and the goop sort of turning into like a vague human shape. But he's soon grabbed and ran out of there by Whiplash, who eventually gets caught in the goop, burning away from the legs up until he's gone, and the goop makes that same glow. Then White Dragon sees that the goop has began to erode away at this big like control tower, causing it to start falling towards this group of civilians, which he catches as he turns into his dragon form, saving everybody, but then gets himself stuck in the goop just like Whiplash and dies, causing this big tower to fall. As we see the boy that was part of this crowd is the only one left behind, and as Reaper reaches out to try and catch him, we see the tower fall into frame, cut to black. We then open up seeing that it's been 10 years since the opening, where superheroes used to be a more common thing. A lot of them now are retired, selling books about their lives as crime fighters, doing sponsorships for restaurants and toothpaste, but not a lot of actual crime fighting is being done anymore, mainly because the public doesn't trust superheroes anymore. We watch someone stepping out of a taxi wearing a skull helmet and just a plain hoodie and jeans, entering this small cafe, and when the door closes we see a sign that says Superheroes Anonymous. It's actually some kind of therapy group for retired superheroes to meet up with each other and try to quit being heroes by telling their stories and quit the addiction of wearing the masks and the capes. One specific member refuses to speak. Reaper, this guy with the skull mask and the hoodie. He's the only hero that survived that event at the beginning of the movie, what people are now calling the Cataclysm. Some people are questioning why Reaper didn't do more to help the other heroes, some saying that it's because he doesn't have any actual powers to be a hero, but no matter what's said, Reaper just refuses to talk. This is a day-to-day cycle, and although he refuses to speak or add anything to the conversation in this therapy group, he does genuinely regret not doing anything, and is trying to do his best to find answers. On his walk home after therapy, he sees this old lady about to be mugged, but as he leaps in to help her, she instead aims her panic and anger towards him, telling him to leave her alone before whipping out this shotgun from her purse, and tells him that mask-wearing menaces like him should just be in prison. He tries to help her until he decides to shake off everything that she's just barraged at him verbally and walk home. We then see that from a distance, someone wearing that same red and black spider-themed costume as the little boy from the beginning of the movie watched the whole thing go down from a rooftop. Another day begins. We get like that usual morning montage or alarm clock kind of shit that starts the scene after we cut from black from the last scene. We see Reaper go through this whole morning routine, getting up, eating breakfast, steps to hear on the news that a pair of muggers are now added to the list of recently found dead criminals. Reaper looks down at his skull mask, remembering what wearing a mask used to mean, before walking from his apartment onto the bus, trying to get to therapy. Along the way, crowds and various random people on the street recognize him, protesting and just constantly reminding him that the cataclysm happened and the death of the Guardians and superheroes in general was all his fault. Finally arriving at therapy, he enters the restaurant and goes to his seat. We then hear another member of this group speak up, breaking the usual pattern of what's been going on here at this therapy group. I can't believe any of you. You're all here trying to quit being heroes instead of actually helping people. See, when the Guardians were here, being a hero meant something. Who cares about powers or capes? Shouldn't it be about saving people to win and winning to save people? Reaper hears these words, and for the first time in 10 years, he talks at one of these therapy meetings. What's your name? The spider-themed hero tries to speak up before being talked over by other members at this therapy group who explain that his name is Red Arachnid. It's just this random ground level hero who just showed up one day looking for other heroes to join his group instead of actually participating in the therapy group. It's not just some random group. I'm trying to learn how to be a real hero, sir. You guys are the whole reason I'm doing this. Reaper, after hearing this, refuses joining Red Arachnid's team or making any effort to start up a team, and heads back to his apartment where Red Arachnid is waiting for him because Red Arachnid's got B&E skills, I guess. Red Arachnid tries to talk to him about that night, the cataclysm, but Reaper just doesn't believe the world needs heroes anymore. Their conversation is quickly interrupted, however, by some massive explosion downtown. The two of them rush off and discover that something is tearing through the streets, and it's going really fast. After a bit of teamwork, they manage to stop this thing that they can't even see because it's going so fast and catching it in a shipping container near the city docks. Once they manage to trick it into running off a dock and hitting water, bashing its face into the end of the container and causing it to glitch out. After looking outside, it seems like some kind of robot that looks exactly like Whiplash. Someone is making robot replicates of superheroes? Reaper is shocked, and Red Arachnid asks him once again to join him and form a new team of heroes. Maybe they can solve this case. Before they leave, though, the robot begins to play some kind of voice recording, but it's just scrambled words. You serve your reason this. Then this super droid shuts down and combusts, sparks flying out from its neck. Red Arachnid figures that it must be glitching out since the shipping container is cutting off the signal between whoever is controlling it. We get this short montage of interviews that take place in Reaper's apartment with these random superheroes who are rejects, wink, from other superhero teams to join this new team. And the two members that get approved are Nightblade, who's this like hacker ninja that is never allowed to talk because he's taken like a vow of silence or something like that. But he mostly communicates through like mumbles through his mask, kind of like Kenny from South Park. And then we've got Rain, who's this waterbender who has a little bit more to her that we'll get into later. With a new team assembled, everyone decides they need to train together and prepare for the oncoming battles with these super droids. We get a sort of powwow type of scene where each of our heroes explain the blessings and curses of their powers. Nightblade, is part of his oath when he originally joined the Ninja Clan, is forbidden from taking off the suit he wears, so no one is ever really able to understand him. And Rain first got her powers when she was competing as a swimmer in school. She could only focus on each breath she took before diving back under the water, and hadn't realized that she had grown a set of gills and teeth, like a shark. And then suddenly a kid in the water had bumped his head on the diving board and just bled into the pool. And without even realizing what she was doing, she had bitten off his leg. Reaper decides to just skip his turn and not talk about his experience because he feels like most people should know his experience, given he was a guardian at one point, and instead asks for Red Arachnid's origin story. Red Arachnid looks down at his hands before clenching his fists tightly and begins to recount how he was obsessed with becoming a superhero when he was a kid. His parents were supervillains, but he wanted to be a hero, like the Guardians. He even managed to sneak out one night and see a superhero battle up close. But because of the battle going on being so intense, a control tower had managed to fall. And after they cleared the rubble, they managed to save him, and shortly after that, he put on this mask and became Red Arachnid. Curious, Reaper asks who his parents were as supervillains. I actually never knew their real evil identities. You know my uncle, though. He was An alarm is sounded, and the team then sees that a massive creature is rampaging through town. It's another android, but this time it looks like it's designed after a giant white dragon. Team all head there, but quickly realize that they're not exactly used to working as a team, given that they were all kind of like the bench warmers of their old superhero teams. Collateral damage occurs, bystanders are injured, Rain is left balling herself up in a corner trying to calm herself down after trying to bite into Nightblade. He doesn't blame her, but she can't help feeling that it's just like when she tried to eat that boy forever ago. This only leaves Red Arachnid and Reaper to try and fight this giant robotic dragon, so we get kind of this cool little fight scene. They actually manage to do it by bumping the robot into a large generator and shocking it with electricity. And Reaper is a bit surprised because electricity was exactly what White Dragon's weakness was, something that only a member of the team would have known. Just as the robot is crashing down, Red Arachnid tumbles with it and is crushed beneath the giant robot before the dust settles. Reaper rushes in to dig through the rubble and realizes that the robot has started to melt away before seeping away into the sewer. Reaper tries to follow after it, but then shifts his attention to Red Arachnid, impaled by a piece of rebar through his face. Team all gather around trying to think of something that they can do to save Red Arachnid, but it's too late. Reaper, in the heat of the moment, takes off his helmet and tries speaking to Red Arachnid. Who are you? Where's Reaper? Sir? Confusingly, Reaper then looks down at his mask and puts it back on before trying to speak to him again. But that's right when he dies, with his last words being, couldn't James the 4. The team is heartbroken at the loss of the one member that wanted them all together. So now they're going to become a team in memory of him. Avenge him, if you will. Rain figures out that if whoever is making these super droids is making ones of the original members of the Guardian team, then there's only one droid left, Crimson Crusader. But Reaper tells her that's not possible. Rightfully, Rain and Nightblade are a little confused. Reaper explains, the super droids are only robots of original members who are dead. And Crimson Crusader is alive. The team is shocked, but quickly gets ready as Reaper tells them to see if they can follow the ooze down in the sewer while he heads back to the original Guardian's secret headquarters. It's been years since it was originally abandoned, but we see in a flashback, secretly after the Cataclysm, Reaper and Crimson Crusader had met back up at the base, having a fight over how it was and how it wasn't their fault for what happened, and how they need to keep being heroes, but Reaper blames the recklessness of superheroes in general for what happened. So Reaper said he'd never let it out that Crimson Crusader was hiding out at the headquarters, and the two never spoke again since. Reaper thinks that if anyone would try to create superheroes again to bring them back, it must be Crimson Crusader. He's the only one who actually would still be alive and know the original weaknesses of the original team members. Once he arrives there, he sees that the place is in shambles. Doesn't even look like anyone has been there in years. But then a massive computer activates and begins to play a recording of Crimson Crusader, showing several entries like a video diary. He talks about how he thinks that the thing that went wrong that day was that he hadn't told everyone the threat they were all facing. Not King Cobra, but the weird ooze. It turns out that that ooze is some weird thinking living metal called Atonium. It was an experiment he was working on with his brother, a supervillain named Emerald Enemy, and his wife, the Sinister Sapphire. Atonium was meant to help boost superpowers and give normal people a chance to be a hero, but the project was sealed away and Emerald Enemy, along with Sinister Sapphire, ran off to start their family. Crimson Crusader figured the best thing to do would be to give the Atonium to the government for them to dispose of it, but then King Cobra somehow found out about it. Someone leaked the info about Atonium to King Cobra. Cut to in the sewers as Rain and Nightblade are going through tunnel after tunnel, following this trail of Atonium that slowly slithers its way to this small lab. Nightblade tries to keep watch as Rain investigates the things on the desks, seeing a photo of a family with 2 brothers on it. The rest of the things on the desk seem to be blueprints for all the super droid. And that's when Rain realizes what's going on. She tries to turn around, but immediately her and Nightblade are met with these blobs of Atonium that transform into replicates of them, and they begin to fight before we cut back to the recording of Crimson Crusader. I'm sorry for a lot of things. The biggest mistake of my life was losing my connection with my brother and his family. My nephew, James, always looked up to me, always wanted to be a hero. But Jacob was different, much more like his father, especially after the accident in the lab. Some of the Atonium, a bang can be heard as someone in the video is trying to break down the door behind Crimson Crusader. Reaper keeps watching, trying to find out what's really going on here. I don't have much time. He's here. I never would have thought the day would come where I'd lose a family member. After the cataclysm, I couldn't be a hero anymore. Once I found out that, then a screen showing the faces of Whiplash and Red Arachnid comes up, playing back the final words of both of them, and their jumbled final words form a final sentence. You couldn't save James. You're the reason for this. And that's when a gauntlet is launched right through the monitor near Reaper's head before it comes back, and we see there is now a robot of Crimson Crusader here. Reaper and this robot begin to battle, the droid only repeating this phrase in an enthusiastic Clee Superman kind of tone, like, I'll save the world! The fight destroys the lab and all the evidence revealing who is behind this, as Reaper tries to contact the others, but they aren't responding. And that's when Crimson Crusader pins down Reaper, shattering his mask a bit, and suddenly someone begins clapping their hands as they slowly make their way across a catwalk above. Bravo! Just like in the comics. Guardians Issue 0, the origin issue. I always dreamed of what it would be like to watch it play out. I figured you'd have figured out what was going on. After all, I left those voice messages for you to piece together. Reaper's eyes widen with shock as we see that the person on the catwalk, the person behind all of this, is Red Arachnid. You like him? I made sure he has all those neat little catchphrases and gadgets. Hard to not remember those little details when you have a brother who did nothing but idolize you monsters. Red Arachnid explains what really happened the night of the Cataclysm. His parents had left the Atonium project after he managed to get a small piece of it spilled onto him. He then opens up his jacket and shows this massive hole going straight through his chest that is sealed with silver and mechanical details of like advanced robotics keeping what remains of him together. Once they had left the Atonium project, they became supervillains who regularly fought with Crimson Crusader and the other Guardians, but it was never enough to convince Jacob's twin brother James away from trying to be a big hero like his uncle Crimson Crusader. So Jacob contacted King Cobra as this anonymous evil master planner and led to the Atonium being leaked out at that base. He also made sure that the Guardians were the ones who responded with hopes that his uncle Crimson Crusader would get even the smallest amount of the Atonium on him so that he could feel the damage and pain of his experiment, trying to give people powers just the same way that it gave him. It didn't all go to plan though. James convinced Jacob to sneak out to see the battle in person, and once the building was dropped by White Dragon, he saw how Reaper failed to save James. This hero, the last one there, didn't even try hard enough to do what they always were believed to. So Jacob dedicated his whole life to figuring out how to properly control Atonium, and now he's going to replace heroes with these super droids. The only thing he needs now is the public to see how his super droid of Crimson Crusader defeats the rejects, and then the world will be his to manipulate and control with these super droids. So, it's time for the final battle, third act. Our team of 3 are all bound in these weird power handcuffs, chained to the floor, as Reaper is now wearing a version of his mask that's been messily welded back together by Red Arachnid. The team have no idea what to do, and now they feel as though everything they've done to this point was for nothing, because it turns out one of their own was actually the big bad. Rain says that maybe Red Arachnid is right. Maybe if it wasn't for the masked heroes, the world really would be a better place, and that those who wear masks should be in prison. That's when Reaper realizes that she's right. Maybe the masks are the problem. When the Red Arachnid droid was dying, he didn't recognize Reaper without his mask on. And Red Arachnid welded back together his masks and made sure that all of them were wearing their masks for this big fight with the Crimson Crusader robot. The androids themselves must have some database only operating with heroes that have masks on. And the androids themselves don't have someone behind their mask. Without the faceplate, the androids lose connection to whatever remote that Red Arachnid is using to control them, just like the Whiplash droid and the Red Arachnid droids. So the team now has a game plan, and once a large door opens up, revealing that they're in some kind of like cyberpunky gladiatorial coliseum, with Red Arachnid now suiting up as some kind of like evil villain, and begins making one of those usual villain monologues about how the world will no longer need heroes and he is going to eliminate them like the plague they are. The Crimson Crusader android slowly raises up in the middle of the Colosseum and activates, beginning to charge at the heroes. This time, though, they're working more as a team instead of rushing in and trying to fight it with their own usual methods from when they were solo heroes. We finally get to see Rain go full on shark mode instead of just like once in a while her gills will flare up or her like webbed hands and shit like that. No, this time we're going on like king shark sized woman. Reaper dismantles pieces of the Crimson Crusader robot and begins to use the gauntlets and boots like his own honor, giving himself the powers that everyone has constantly reminded him he doesn't have. And when the robot is destroyed and the arena begins to crumble down, Red Arachnid is caught hanging by his cape from a catwalk, asking for them to save him. Reaper goes to reach a hand out, hoping to finally redeem himself for not being able to save that one kid who got crushed by the tower all those years ago. But Nightblade steps in front of him, and for the first time ever, he takes off his mask and clearly says, "Fuck you." And he slices a cable that was holding the catwalk up and sends it down to be crushed underneath all the rubble of this Colosseum. The dust settles. The team all smile, taking each other's masks off and presenting themselves as the heroes who saved the day and didn't need masks to do it. They ask each other what they're going to do now. Citizens are cheering them on, calling them heroes, and as the news broadcasts them triumphantly standing in one of those epic poses like they're the Justice League, the cops show up and immediately arrest them for causing the damages and massive explosions from the now destroyed arena, as well as all the other previous fights with the super droids and the collateral damage involved. Conclusion! So yeah, that was it. I had also written a billion different ideas for post-credit scenes and mid-credit scenes and all that stuff, but I don't think those are necessary really to explain or go into detail about it in case I end up wanting to adapt this into some kind of webcomic. It's very, 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 very messy still, and keep in mind this is what I could piece together from the mad ramblings that were in the original script. I actually think the theme of masks being bad and having to actually take the masks off in order to be heroes that succeed is interesting. Red Arachnid is a villain that I would probably have liked to go further more into and flesh him out properly, but the twist with him is still interesting enough to make me want to rewrite this whole story. Regardless, this is a project that I've been trying to present in some form of media for so long now. And now it's out there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for even clicking on the video. It means more to me than you can imagine. Yeah, I guess that's it. Be good people. Be each other's heroes. I'll see you soon. This is good milk. Shamrock Shake. Bussin'.